Hello everybody, how are we all doing? Hope we're all good. I'm going to do a video today about Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. It's another one of these Pantheon videos. Really cool game. It is currently in like a seasonal launch state where they are testing all the content, testing new zones and everything. It's really cool. And I am playing a rogue, as you can see here. He's actually behind the the terrifying shriek. He's behind the shriek. He's stabbing away. But I'm in a group. And what I wanted to do is do a video about the roles within a group and the flexible ability of different classes. And it's something that I'm really intrigued by, because honestly I think I'm spoilt with the rogue, and I really want everybody else on all the other classes to have the same feeling and ability that I'm getting when I'm playing a rogue. Obviously, everybody who plays the game can play the game in their own different way. If you just want to, if you want to be just a warrior or someone really simple, and you can just sit there and have really simple button options and ability options and things like that, that's absolutely awesome. I like being a little bit more involved and having some choices and decisions to make within a group, which is really good fun. And I wanted to do this video just to see and open like a conversation about everybody's classes. Now, I'm going at this from a rogue point of view. I've done a little bit of kind of chit-chatting away with some of my friends in the guild, and trying to pull in all of their thoughts and opinions as well, and we'll try and touch on some of those. But ultimately what I want to do, and I think this is where we're going to kind of start from, is like it's like the Holy Trilogy. The Holy Trilogy of MMOs has always been like the DPS, the healing and the tanking, and then you've got this extra one, which Pantheon and it's sort of evolved. MMOs have evolved into having this crowd control / utility one as well, which is really good. And across this matrix, I think this is where everybody's class will sit somewhere, I think, within this matrix. So if you start with a really simple one, if you start with a cleric, so a cleric here is going to have a really simple point, not tanking. He's going to sit up here on the healing side of things. So he's going to be, in theory, he's going to be the best healer that you can have. The best healer that is available for a group is going to be a cleric. Okay, if you look at the DPS range, same kind of thing. The best, arguably the best kind of DPS is going to be something like a wizard. So a wizard is going to come down here and he's going to be the best. Now, I think it's really important that we have these extremes to start talking about flexing, because you have to have a 100% marker set to then fit in all the other classes and everybody else's roles. So tanking, not particularly difficult. It's going to be a warrior. The warrior should be, historically, it's always going to be the best tanking class. There are other tanks and they tank in different ways, which is really interesting in Pantheon. But the 100% down on this part of the matrix for tanking, I think, is going to be the warrior. And then crowd control, I know a few of them and they are very good. Enchanter. So the enchanter is down here playing crowd control. That is when you get multiple mobs coming in on a pull. So you're pulling some mobs in so that the group can kill them. If you're getting multiple mobs coming in, then you can crowd control. You can lock those mobs down so that they're not going to interrupt and intrude on your killing. And then you can, once you've taken one out, you can then release one of the others and you can bring him in. Now, one of the things that a rogue, I think, does really well. And a rogue is a DPS class, so you can stick a rogue down here in DPS. So this is where a rogue will sit. He is a DPS class. Now, one of the things that rogue does really well is, I think he's quite able to flex across into crowd control quite well. Now, the amount at which you can kind of move across and get across to this crowd control, or get across to an alternative role within a group, is going to vary. Now, I don't think, for instance, a tank up here Let's go and see if we can get the warrior. I don't think a tank up here. I don't think a warrior should be flexing down to all the way down to DPS. I don't think you can go, okay, I'm going to be a tank. Okay, well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap all my abilities out and I'm just going to be DPS. I don't think that's necessary for these kind of pinnacle classes. However, I do think that a warrior should be able to come down here somewhere and come do a little bit less tanking and come down a little bit towards the DPS side of things. Now, the conversation that I want to bring up is how well our abilities within Pantheon, specifically talking about Pantheon, how well our abilities are internally balanced to allow us to do this sort of flex. Now the rogue, and I've said this a lot for the rogue, I can fill my ability bar, and I'm pretty sure everybody, all the classes can fill your ability bar really easily for your main role. The shamans, the shamans famously are just up in arms because we've got too many utilities, too many abilities. You can't fit them all on the bar, which is great. Now the rogue is something sort of similar as well. Now the rogue, if I want to go full on DPS, right over here, I obviously can't quite get up to the wizard. I can sort of sometimes get close to a monk, but if I want to go all the way over here to a DPS sort of build, then I can fill out all of my ability bars. I did a video about this a while ago. I can fill out all of my ability bars with all of these kind of cool damage and a little bit of buffing, if you like, or debuffs. So you can take a little bit of armor off the mob to allow us to DPS a little bit more and get a little bit more damage up. One of the things that they do really well in Pantheon, particularly with this new combat techniques which are coming out in the next few weeks, which we're all really excited to try, is kind of weaving in some abilities so I can make a mob vulnerable and then another class can take advantage of that and lower its armor value, which is really, really good. And that ability gives you, or gives some of the classes, another role to think about when they're filling out their ability bar. So one of the things that the rogue does really well is I can fill my ability bar purely with DPS. So I can go full on DPS. Now what I can do, and this is where I'm really interested to hear from all the other classes, if I give up a couple of those bits of DPS, and it's really important to have internal balance with your abilities, because it's a choice then. It's not like, okay, well that's just like the worst DPS ability possible, I'm just going to drop it anyway and I'm always going to have some sort of mez on there for crowd control. If I drop a little bit of my DPS abilities, I can shift further and further and further across here to crowd control. Now I'm never going to be as good as an enchanter, but I can get all the way over here, probably, I don't know, somewhere around here for the sake of argument. I can get somewhere around here so that when we're pulling, if we get a tricky pull, or it looks like we're going to get a tricky pull, I can maybe lock down. I mean, I can sort of lock down 3 mobs, sort of, for about a minute. However, my DPS suffers massively. Like, arguably, it's probably a little bit more up here somewhere. So my DPS suffers. I'm pretty much always out of combat because I need to keep 1 mezzed, keep 2 rooted, and then once one of the mobs that we're working on is maybe down to half health or something, I don't have to worry too much about the mez. I can go a little bit more DPS on that mob, take that one down. Kind of drop back out of combat, if you like, or drop back into stealth, re-root the 2 mobs, take out the one that's mez, that sort of thing. But the DPS takes a massive hit, and flexing in this way I think is really, really healthy for the game, and I think it's really healthy for group play. Now what the game needs to be very, very careful of is making this crowd control here being too good. So we don't want every group going, oh, okay, well, actually we don't need an enchanter because a rogue is absolutely perfect for those times when we get a tricky pull, and then they give DPS as well. So you've got to be very, very careful with that. Now one of the things that the rogue does here is that I have to give up pretty much everything if I want to very, very effectively crowd control, and also the duration is not great. So an enchanter can lock down mobs pretty much I think, pretty much forever, depending on how much mana they have as it's kind of wearing out. However, a rogue can't. Like, it runs out 18 seconds and then the mez breaks. And it's a 20-second cooldown, so you've got 2 seconds of this mob running around like a nutcase, smacking people before you can mez it again. So that's really, really cool. Now, let's put the rogue back on here. If we bring up the shaman, so the shaman is, I was talking to a number of shamans, and they are all very, very confident that the shamans kind of flex really, really well as well. So the shamans obviously come up towards healing here. Now, arguably, I think the healing is an interesting state at the moment in Pantheon. I think clerics need a little bit of a revamp, because clerics should be up at this 100%, but the shamans are efficiently maybe a little bit more, I don't know, but they can also flex down here into the DPS quite well, and they also have to give up a ton of abilities. Now, if you look at something like let's bring up something like where's a paladin? There's a paladin. If we have a paladin, paladins obviously are tanking, a tank class, and they could flex over to healing over here. Now, do paladins have enough internal balance with their abilities to say that, okay, these 8 abilities that I need on my bar at all times make me a really, really good tank? Or are paladins in a state of, well, actually, I only need these 3 abilities, and then the rest of the abilities that we get are not vying for that position on my ability bar, so I can put some healing in there anyway. So effectively, if you have bad internal balance with your abilities, then you can still do your role really well, but you can also flex really easily, because there's no choice to have. There's nothing fighting for those spots that allow you to flex across to healing. Let's have a look at the monk. The monk is a cracking one, because the monk can DPS here, but it can also kind of come up here and tank as well. Now, I believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the monks don't have to give up too many abilities to be able to switch to tank, because I think it's a stance. Please correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. But it's a really interesting kind of idea and thought on this, that I'm quite curious about what everybody thinks about the ability and importance of the flex ability that your classes have. Dire Lord here, for instance, is a perfect one. Tanks really, really well, and should be able to flex down here into DPS. So they're probably somewhere around here, maybe, as like their best tanking ability, and then they can swap out some abilities and come down here to DPS. Now, I've spoken to a fair few Dire Lords in the guild. Many of them say that tanking is incredibly difficult, and they only use, say, 3 abilities. Now, if they're only using 3 abilities, what's on the rest of their bar? So if there's no internal balance with your abilities, and there's just 3 which are the best, if you like, and efficient use of your resources within a fight, then what are you putting on the rest of the bar? If you're putting stuff to DPS, then you're really kind of in the same situation as the paladin, where I haven't got enough abilities to make use of my main role in a group, and I'm already flexing, sort of thing. I hope that makes sense, and I'm trying to do this mainly because I have so much fun on my rogue, in terms of, okay, now this time I'm going to try in this particular kind of group fight, I'm going to switch it around. I'm going to use a blunt offhand, which allows me to maybe stun some mobs and just kind of help out a little bit in there. I'm going to flex and have a flash trap, which kind of will stun some mobs on the way in. Allows the enchanter just a fraction more time to nail down some mezzers, and also the stun helps on the mezzers as well. So there's so many options and choices on the rogue, and even then we don't have. There's some abilities in our. Go and have a look at my other rogue video if you want to have a look at that. There's some abilities on our rogue which don't have great internal balance. Things like shadow planning, it's terrible, and it never ever makes it onto my bar, because you've got to you've got to waste time casting something. You've then got to hit something else to kind of activate your ability. You're wasting time when you could be DPSing. So there are some abilities which just don't work in the rogue, but we've still got a nice. I do think the rogue and maybe the shaman. I don't know what the shamans think. I do think the rogue is like the blue ribbon A-star expectation, or the A-star version of the perfect class build up in Pantheon, all the way from these are so by the time you get to level 10, you have your main role set. You get backstab, you get stealth, you get all the cool things that you can do for damage, or some of the cool things you can do for damage. You get some really awesome ones later on and stuff, but you get some cool things to do for damage, and then you start getting sprinkled in. Okay, here's a spring wire trap, so there's your root trap. Here is a mez. So by the time you get to 10, I think you get a root and you get a mez, or at least a stun, which is really good. And then it gives you time to kind of learn your main role. It gives you time in a group to learn what you can do to kind of help in your kind of flex situation over here into crowd control, and I think ultimately it's just one of the most perfect classes. I think it's brilliant. Now I know Pantheon Visual Realms for some reason seem to hate nerfing our weapons. Seem to love nerfing our weapons, or so I hate the word nerf, tweaking our weapons, but I think that's just because the new damage thing is coming through. Yes, I think the rogue is absolutely perfect. Now, looking at things like the warrior, I'm really excited about the warrior, and when the warrior gets its revamp, then they get these banners which are kind of coming out and things. Now, which way would the warrior kind of flex coming around here? Now, because he's the 100% marker, because he's the prime tank, I don't think these four classes here need to flex as much as some of the other ones. So, for instance, something like I don't know, again, it's probably the rogue again. Something like the rogue, which is kind of sitting in the middle here, it can flex an awful lot, but it's never going to kind of get all the way up to the top. It's never going to kind of be the best at something. It's just going to be very good at an awful lot of things. When you're all dying, we're going to be pulling your corpses out on corpse runs and things. But warriors, to be able to level and get the abilities kind of set in the right way for a warrior, they need to have I don't know. They need to have, by the time they are level 10, they need to have a valid way to tank, and a number of different ways to tank. Now I know there are a couple of warriors that I know, one of which tanks with 2 really quick daggers to help him get his readiness up, get his resources up, and he will tank that way. Another tank I know will tank with a sword and a shield. 2 different ways of tanking. And I think as long as Pantheon and Visual Realms can get the abilities in, I think level 10 is the marker. You need to have a set role, and the abilities need to be spread out within that level 10 range, that 10 level range, to introduce your main role and introduce a little bit of flex in certain ways. And also, this was one of the things that I absolutely just fell out with when I started a paladin, teaches you how to use and manage your resources at the start. So the paladin, the abilities that you get as a paladin does not teach you anything about, like, I think I got to level 6 and I had no idea what wrath was, but that's beside the point. So the purpose of this video is just to get the conversation going. I'm really curious to see what everybody else thinks. I'm going to put this in the Discord, and hopefully I'll see loads of comments down below, just in terms of where you think your class sits, and how well you think you're flexing. Now the summoner should be down here with DPS, and then it can flex up a little bit into tanking as well with the Titan pet. So maybe the summoner should be somewhere around here, with a little bit of flex up towards the tanking. How well does that flex do? Or do you find yourself, well, at the moment, obviously you've only got 3 abilities anyway, but hopefully looking forwards, how well do you have internal internal balance of your abilities to vie for those 8 slots on your ability bar. Because if you don't have internal balance and you can do your main role and your flex and a little bit of your flex role without having to worry about the choice of what abilities you put on your bar, then I think that's a bad situation for that class sort of thing. So Ranger, there's a lot of DPS stuff, isn't there? Rangers, I don't really know. They're probably somewhere around DPS, maybe going into crowd control, do they? And then, is that all of them? That is all of them. There we go. Are we missing one? I'm looking forward to the Necro. So the Necro moving up like DPS and crowd control, that's going to be really, really good fun. And then obviously the Druid up with the healing as well. So in terms of here, I think the Cleric really needs a more obvious and clear route across all their abilities, and the tanking, I think the tanking situation just needs to be having a little look as well. Yeah, Rogue, I just think I'm spoilt. I have so much fun and so much like, oh, do I drop this down? Like, do I drop this ability out? Within groups, I think it's so much fun. And then also, on the flip side to all of this, of course, guys, there are rogues, and I have done on a number of occasions. I've just gone, okay, I'm going to have these 4 abilities. They're the only 4 abilities I'm going to use in this group because I just want an easy group today. I just want to rock on. I just want to stealth. I want to come out, sinister strikes and backstab, and then just shiv or something. So, yeah. Yeah, there we go. That's the video. Anyway, that's just the video I wanted to make. I've been talking about this a lot in groups that I've been doing recently, and I thought it would be a really interesting one to put out, throw it up on Discord, and then just have a conversation about this because I think it's an interesting one, and hopefully Visual Realms will think it's interesting as well, and we can have more of a communicative conversation about it. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care, and I will see you for the next video. Next season's coming up, and I'm really looking forward to going back to 0, back to level 1, starting all over again. Nice set wipe, and by the sounds of it, they've got lots of cool changes coming up. So more videos like this coming up, probably about the Rogue. Take care, everybody. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.